Hey, Bowdoin family. It's Phillip Ying here and David Ying, along with some very special guests that we're going to introduce in just a minute. The Bowdoin Festival has had, as you all know, a 55-year history. It's been a fantastic run, one that we look forward to, though this has been a little bit of a detour for all of us in the last year or so, but one that we just look forward to continuing in all of its strengths and in its glorious music making for many, many years into the future. We're proud of so many things about this 55-year history, but I think one of the things we're most proud of, in fact, I could say maybe it is the thing we're most proud of as the Bowdoin Music Festival, is our alumni and the way that our alumni go on to make a difference in the world of music and in the world in general. One of those ways that I think many of our alumni have made a difference is in the field of chamber music. I think the Bowdoin Festival has one of the most distinguished histories of any music festival out there of producing musicians who go on to very successful and fulfilling and significant lives in chamber music. And as an example, I call your attention to our three guests, who are all alumni of the Bowdoin Festival at one time or another, who are really at the top of their field and have been for many, many years. It's great to have them. I will, let's see, I'll go around and introduce them one by one. And maybe after I introduce you, you can begin. And I think I prepared you for this because I know it's hard when they're like, okay, share a memory of the time you were Bowdoin. So I think I prepared you for this. Well, I'm going to start with Serena Cannon because Serena has a long history, a long family history with a festival that I'm sure all of you know well. Not only was she a participant herself at the festival, but for many, many years, can I say at least 50 years? Is that right? Is that possible?
Unbelievable. Yes. My
Yes.
my first summer at Bowdoin was in 1971, which makes me about 70 years old. Um, but no, I was four that summer when my father first started working there, teaching there. He was a pianist and he was involved almost from the beginning, not quite, but with Lewis Kaplan. And he was there every summer until, the late 2010 or 2016, I think was his last summer. So he was there for 50 years. And I grew up at the Bowdoin Music Festival. I have an interesting perspective on it because I wasn't that interested in music when I was just a kid there, but it it really set the stage. It set the background for for a lot of important things, even though I didn't realize it at the time. But first of all, my parents were very happy there, and I could just like the dynamic in our family relaxed every time we got to Maine. My parents loved the environment, they loved the students, they loved the concerts. They took me to every concert, every master class, everything that was going on. I was five, but I was there. And that, I may have rebelled against that for a while at the time, but I think I eventually that really set a wonderful example and a wonderful backdrop that really kind of showed me what music was about and how important it is and how much goes into performing music and playing music on a high level. It's just an amazing journey. Um,
Any particular story you'd like to share?
yeah, so I was a young violinist, a very casual one. It was my parents' thing, it wasn't really my thing. I see Astrid smiling because eventually I attended the Bowdoin Festival as a violin student, and I was in high school at the time. I was young. And I definitely hadn't made the violin my own yet. However, chamber music was my favorite thing. And I remember being, I think Astrid and I were in a group together for one summer.
For a summer, we were, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if I wasn't the committed student that you were
You were
hoping for.
fabulous. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I do have this amazing memory of coaching the Brahms G minor piano quartet with Nina Belina, who was, she has passed away, but she was a wonderful violinist, a very intense, like if you were looking for warm and nurturing in a teacher, she was not it. She was very intense, very focused, and I found her, excellent but rather severe. But anyway, I had prepared my part for the second movement of that piece, which is this very shadowy intermezzo, mysterious, covered, in the shadows kind of movement. And I was playing it all in first position on the A string. Fine, I was playing it fine, I felt. But she broke to me the inconvenient truth that that really had to be up on the D string, up, way up high. And that was so hard for me at that point. And I remember being really, really upset. And I came home like to my roommate, who happened to be Renee Joles, who is now a Bowdoin faculty member, an Eastman faculty member. And I said, "Oh, this unbelievable, terrible thing happened to me. Nina Bellina told me I had to play this up on the D string." And Renee shrugged. She was like, "Yeah, well, okay." But I remember being upset by it, and it kind of taught me that I cared. That was my first step. Like, I didn't just shrug it off. Like, it actually was important to me. And I realized how far I had to go if I was going to, be able to do this. But anyway, that was kind of a nice, it was kind of a nice moment, because looking back on it, I think that was a kind of breakthrough moment.
Thanks, Serena. Well, something must have stuck either at Bowdoin or other places, because Serena, as you all know, is a founding member of the Brentano Quartet, one of the most successful quartets that's out there. I thought for a moment you were going to tell a story about Astrid. But now, Astrid, now's your moment to tell a story about Serena, if you choose. Astrid Schween is the cellist of the Juilliard String Quartet. Previously, she was a member of the Lark String Quartet, and she is, as everyone you see, has made her life primarily in chamber music, the amazing world of chamber music. Astrid, what year did you attend the festival, and would you like to share a story from that year?
Sure, Phil, I'd love to. It's so nice listening to Serena talk about her reminiscences of the place. It's just such a beautiful spot, first of all. I was there in 1984. And I came to Bowdoin for two reasons. One was Channing Robbins was bringing his class of students that summer to get ready for the fall semester. That was going to be my first full semester with Mr. Rose. I'd started working with him the previous spring. And so I was very gung-ho. I had a case full of music that we were going to get through. And the other reason was I'd been working with Lewis Kaplan in sonata class at Juilliard, and we had a great time working on Debussy and Beethoven and all kinds of things. So I think what was really interesting, I kind of got to know Bowdoin from the point of view of being a cellist and being part of a cello seminar. Mr. Robbins sort of rented space for the first week before the festival started. And so we just met every day for lessons and master classes and more lessons and more master classes. It was a very bonding, wonderful time, very intensive focus. And then when the festival started, it was so much about chamber music. It was lovely. It was a really great, I think I made some of my closest friends, people I'm still very close to and in touch with. Played great repertoire. And I think one of the stories I want to share is my friendship with Sam Sanders, which began that summer. Sam was in residence. He was teaching, he was coaching, he was performing, and we became sort of unlikely friends because I was always up late in my dorm. I was sort of the proctor of my dorm. And I was always up late practicing, and Sam was always up late practicing down the hall on some piano. And we got into the habit of meeting for graham crackers late at night in one of the common areas and talking about different scores and repertoire. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting. This is a professor and he has all this interesting, to have that kind of access was just wonderful. And he was so lovely, so generous. I later took sonata class with him the following year and sort of went on tour with him a little bit to do some page turning, which really got my mind going about how interpretation works and how one prepares at that level for concertizing. I would say those are the most stressful concerts I've ever taken part in. I find it much easier to play the instrument than turn somebody else's pages. But it was a very important experience, and I'll never forget it.
Thanks, Astrid. I was going to ask you, was it more stressful to turn pages or to play cello? But you answered that. And I'd also hear a strong endorsement to make graham crackers the official snack.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They lasted the whole summer. We were good.
Well, great. Thanks. And finally, Will Fedkenheuer. Will, you are can I call you a grizzled veteran of many string quartets? There's you spent time in the Borromeo String Quartet, you're a member of them, and then you were first violin of the Fry Street Quartet out in Utah for many years, and now you're a member of the Mural Quartet in residence at the University of Texas. Will, you want to share when you were at the Bowdoin Festival, who you studied with, and if you have a story to tell of your time there?
Yeah, these were such beautiful stories. So I was there in 1991, and for me it was the first summer that I had really traveled for classical music. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada, and at a very young age I started traveling. Was very successful as a country western fiddler. And traveled around both on my own and as like a Canadian ambassador and all of that. But I had also grown up in this conservatory where there were a lot of really gifted instrumentalists, but they were all 8 to 12 years older than me. And so I came to Bowdoin because my sister, who was a violist studying with Roland Vameless at the time, had talked to Roland in Almeida, and I had sent in a tape, and I was accepted. And I had really no idea. It was such a gift to think about leading up to this time together today, and thinking about, well, what did it all mean to me? Because for me, it was the first time I had exposure to a group of people my age who were playing classical music at this level, which I thought only people 6, 8, 10 years older than me played at. And there was this camaraderie inside of the group. And I remember one of my memories, I had 2 memories I was hoping to share. My first memory was walking into the first recital of students and hearing the first person on there was this young violinist, Sally Koo, who just was playing the heck out of Scherzo Tarantella. And my eyes were just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here for me? And it was just mind-blowing to me to then be able to sit down there was some orchestra that we did, to play in chamber music groups, to work with faculty, like with Mr. Kaplan and faculty from Juilliard. And it just completely opened my mind to this world of what was possible in classical music in a whole different way. And in looking back to it, it really was a pivotal moment in my life and saying, wow, like, look at this. This is something very, very special to you. And the group of people that were there, I'll pivot into the second memory. It was an amazing group, and so many of them, like today, Sibby Bernardson, Sameen, Brandon, Jennifer Koh was there. It's actually where I met Daniel Ching and Sandy Yamamoto. Daniel is the first violinist of Mural Quartet, and Sandy is his wife, and we now live and work together. So there's all of those special gifts, and what I remember so clearly too was the joy that we had together, like arriving for lunch and finding out there's lobster, and then we had water fights. I'm sure some of those weren't so great, but just being able to hang out. And there was one really unique, there was a group of us who really loved all of those things, and we even put together money to get a Vermonster for everybody. And to be able to sit, I remember sitting at Burnett House with all of these people enjoying a Vermonster, which is something I'd never heard of in my life. It was bigger than I could dream of. But then to be able to sit down with those same people and have the same type of fun playing chamber music. So I just, there's so many gifts of those memories from my time there, and it's such a treat to be able to revisit those and to share those with everybody here today.
Thanks, Will. Those of you who are currently involved in the festival know that many years ago there was a Ben and Jerry's on Main Street in Brunswick, and now the main frozen treat attraction is a place called Gelato Fiasco, which has some of the best gelato, in Dave and Maya's opinion, I'll speak for both of us, that we found anywhere. Right there, started in Brunswick, Maine. And so instead of a monster, they have the Fiasco. And similarly, many of the students get together, and by the end of the summer, they put all their money together and they go enjoy a Fiasco, which is, you know, their ice cream monstrosity or gelato monstrosity. So that story, I think, the idea of that story continues on at the Bowdoin Festival. I also really like your story. Did you say it was someone named Sally Koo?
Yeah, Sally,
Yes.
she lives down in New York now, and she's a freelance violinist, and she actually went to Yale, and it was stunning just to hear, you know, to be exposed to that, and people your age, for me, was mind-blowing. I mean, and it made me actually engage more in the instrument and more in everything that was going on there.
Right. It just, you know, it strikes me, we have this festival atmosphere, and you really have no idea what experience or hearing what music strikes that chord in another young musician's mind and heart. For you, it was a fellow participant. And maybe I wonder if she ever knew that that was a moment that really changed your mind and your heart about music. And it's really cool to see the way that we inspire each other. You know, it's not just teachers inspiring students, but students inspiring teachers. We all have had that experience, and students inspiring each other. It's pretty awesome. All right, we're going to spend about, I would say, another 20, 25 minutes, Dave and I asking you guys some questions, engaging in conversation. But for those of you who have joined us, we welcome your questions, and we'll focus on those in the last 20 minutes or so of the hour we have together. If you've done Zoom, you know there's a little link on the bottom or something to click. It's not a link, it's something to click where it says Q&A. So if you have questions, why don't you click on that Q&A at any time. It will collect all of those, and we'll ask some of those questions for sure before the end of our hour. But first, Dave and I, we're going to ask you guys some questions. And the first thing that I'd like to ask you guys is, now having spent many decades, and I say that because, you know, knowing that you're all so young and, you know, couldn't possibly have already spent decades in chamber music, but you guys are really, really experienced. I can't think of three more experienced people in the world of chamber music than we have here. We have an audience, hopefully, of board members, of other community members, but of students too, listening. What would you say are some of the greatest lessons you've learned, some of the keys to success that have been meaningful to you in your careers in chamber music?
Who wants to start with that? That's a big one.
Simple question.
Right.
After you asked.
Well, it's a long list. I would say that I got into chamber music because I loved it like everybody else. And the opportunity presented itself at a moment when I actually really didn't envision myself having a career in chamber music. I had always played it with friends. It was always like a thing to gather for and have parties over. I was always studying Beethoven quartets for some reason that I couldn't figure out. But when Lark was looking for a cellist, I thought, well, let me do this. This is going to be interesting. I had no idea what I was stepping into. The richness of the repertoire, the richness of the relationships, the incredible opportunity to work every day with people who have tremendous imaginations. And then, of course, with the older generation of coaches and mentors that we sought out, and the whole competition process that I know so many of us were a part of, and how that helped form artistic identities and helped us find our voices as young players. It's just been such an enriching experience. And now that I'm a teacher and I'm coaching and teaching cellists, I think, wow, in my earlier days, I think about all the things that I didn't know about interpersonal conversations or studying the score or understanding how to build an interpretation, and how just incredibly fulfilling that has been, and how my solo playing has changed so much because of this incredible work in chamber music, and how, those changes have also informed my work in chamber music and in my teaching. And what a great thing to be able to converse in all three of those realms. It's really a very special world we inhabit. And I think a great model for world peace, because we certainly learn how to listen and take on one another's ideas and embrace them fully and give them all the support we possibly can.
I think that's absolutely, I totally relate to the world peace thing. I feel like the world would be a much better place if everyone played chamber music, because there's such a tremendous idealism behind it. There's a tremendous force in making four people become one. And it's a very it's the idea that the whole is better than the sum of the parts, that you can only do this, no one can play the music alone, you need everybody, and you even need second violins to make string quartets happen.
You especially need those.
So yeah, I mean, that really fuels the whole thing for me. I don't know. I came to music. I had a sort of, I came in through the back door kind of. I was a very, very late bloomer. So for anyone out there who is not sure what they want to do, and they're, haven't decided at age 10 that they really want to be a violinist, there is hope. You can still do it, even if you decide much, much later, which I did. But it was chamber music in particular that really grabbed me. Like, I had practiced, all the way through high school, kind of did my bit with concertos and Bach. And then when I went off to college, because I wasn't headed to conservatory, I went to college, they had an amateur string quartet, that it was a sort of scholarship thing. I went to a small liberal arts college, but we were the principal players in the orchestra, and they funded lessons and transportation to study with the private teacher of your choice. And I did this quartet for 4 years, and it completely changed my life. I was in the music building till it shut down every night, and I had this experience of, I don't think we were a very great quartet, but this experience of having a group identity. The school sent us to play. We traveled together to alumni functions and this sort of thing. And I really had that experience of, being part of a close group. I think because I'm an only child too, something psychological was being fulfilled there too. Like, I was looking for my siblings. And, when I was thinking about doing that, I realized I've had a quartet in some way since I was 17. And that's kind of an amazing thing. I always had one at school. And once I got to Juilliard, I always had a quartet. And then the Brentano Quartet started right out of school, and I've been with them ever since. So yeah, quartets are really a powerful thing.
Will?
Yeah, it is all so beautifully spoken. And, when I think about, I do spend time thinking about, well, what is it that I would have loved to have known, or I had so many incredible mentors that looked out for me, or that I could approach with any question. And I feel so fortunate for that. So when I think about, younger musicians or artists aspiring to a life in chamber music, there's a couple main things that I think are just such valuable things to hold on to. one of them that I feel so has been so powerful in my life and in the lives of the different quartets and people I've been involved with is the power of curiosity. To be curious, to ask any question, to explore a project, or whether it's in rehearsal, to just somebody comes up with an idea, to just try it. And there's this power of openness to that curiosity that allows you to make connections that other people don't, and to try things that you would never try, or to learn something that you might never have gotten to the heart of it if you didn't have curiosity really driving it. So I feel like it is a main part of a life as a chamber musician. And I think the other thing that it seems so simple, but it also took me a little while to really understand, is the power of the uniqueness of each of us. And I look at that as the three quartets, or 4 or 5 or 6 quartets, depending how many you count for Astrid and I, that are represented here. And they each are so unique in what they say and how they say it. And, like the Ying, your Beethoven Cycle going on right now, the voice and the power of the uniqueness of each of you that you bring to it, and then what that means to the quartet. And I think that's something that I look at throughout the broader music world as something that's so valued in what we do. And yet for me as a young professional, I don't think I really recognized that. I had people around me really supporting that. But I think about the power of that uniqueness, especially in our world today, and the types of careers that are possible during COVID, online, and how we show up and what gifts we have is so important. And so I would encourage everybody listening to really just double down on your curiosity and the uniqueness that you have. And then the third thing I was thinking about is, as everybody else was talking, was just the power of unconditional support from the mentors and people around you. Like some people who really just believe in you, and to surround yourself with those. Because when I look back at my decades-long career, I see those people everywhere. And I also see people who maybe didn't have as much of a support and were more challenging, but I always had that balance of somebody who was giving me that unconditional support. And that too in itself was something that just continued to propel me forward, to allow me to look at what made me unique or what I wanted to say, and to continue to be curious. So I think, well, it's not necessarily things that we directly teach on an instrument. They're all such powerful things in creating a life in chamber music that cover all of those experiences, from rehearsal and your own instrumental playing to being in an interview like this, or being in a concert with a presenter, or with donors at a reception, and anything like that. And those all really come together to form that life that we're so lucky to lead.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would just add that I just feel, and I think we all would say that we feel so lucky to be living a life in chamber music. It is perhaps, in my mind, one of the most challenging and rewarding ways of not only making music, but being a human being. Because it really, being in chamber music tests you as a human being as well as a musician to the maximum. And I love what you said about curiosity, because if you're really curious, that actually also means that you're somewhat humble, because you realize that you don't have all the answers, and your opinion in your way is not necessarily the best way. And so when it comes to rehearsal, when someone suggests something that sounds completely wrong to you at first, you're not going to immediately say, no, that could never work. You're going to say, let's try it. And you'll honestly try it. You won't just be like, okay, fine, I'll do your idea. But you honestly try because you want to find out what's behind it. And if we could all be like that all the time, because, we're not always like that when we're sure we're right. That's how transformative that is. Dave, do you have a question for these guys?
I love that. I love hearing about everybody talk about relationships. First of all, starting with the ones that you formed at the festival when you were younger, to the ones that lasted for all these years. And now I notice, Will, you're talking about mentors, and we've all benefited from wonderful teachers and mentors. But I just, not coincidentally, observe that all you guys are now mentors to younger musicians. And that is also a beautiful picture of what has happened at the festival over the years and in your lives, at the schools that you work at during the year too. And so since music, and especially chamber music, is so built on the power of relationships, I just wondered if you guys could talk a little bit about what it's been like the last year or so for you all, when kind of, I don't know, maybe you noticed some relationships more than others, maybe you missed some more than others. I know for our quartet, we took maybe how long was it, Phil? From like March till July, we didn't play. And so for me and Phil, this was the longest we had ever not played together in like our lives.
I forgot what he looked like. It was weird. No, I'm kidding.
Well, the other thing I was laughing about was Serena is like, yeah, wow, my quartet became like siblings. They're like my family. I was like, of course your quartet is like your family, your siblings. It's like, isn't that what for everybody? But anyway, no, but I mean, it was a weird thing when we played together again in July. I was kind of like slightly emotional about it. It's like, wow, we're actually playing again. I didn't think I would miss it that much, I guess is what I thought. But can you talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing in the last? Wow, it's been almost a year now, right?
Yeah. I don't know who wants to start this one off, but it has been about a year for us. We really have not been in the same space together. I think our last concert was in Amsterdam at the String Quartet Biennale. We flew home in early February of last year, and we've been in touch a lot, doing a lot of planning, a lot of talking, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of trying to figure out when we could get together. I think, it's different for everyone how to handle this situation, the pandemic. Some of us live with people who have certain compromised conditions. So we were just being very, very cautious. We did do one thing together, which was a layered performance of a commissioned work that we really owed the premiere dates. We had to keep this commitment to these wonderful people at the Arizona Friends of Chamber Music. And so, we did our one real layered project, which is a very humbling thing to take on. And I'm gratified to say that by the time we finished working on, we just chose one movement that was a series of variations written for us by Jörg Wiedmann, great German composer. We chose that because we figured we could easily do one chunk at a time. But by the time we finished it and we put the whole thing together, I was really happy to see that and to hear that it sort of sounded like us. In spite of all the digital interference and all the crazy cutting and stacking of voices, there was something of our personalities and our group ethos that came through. Aside from that, I just feel very fortunate to have my colleagues and know that we're all looking forward to being together very soon, and to have had such great experiences with my students in particular over this last year, working with them and doing a long summer intensive with everybody and kind of zooming in on people's practice, and being a little bit more of a desktop teacher for a lot of it, but getting deep into the nooks and crannies of some issues, technical score reading, all that kind of thing. And then, of course, meeting with friends. You said, are there some relationships that have been, fed by the result of this, as a result of it? And yeah, it's been a great way to time travel and be with people. This weekend alone, I've been in Montreal and Toronto and Miami, and now here with you guys. These are things that would not have happened with such ease and with such frequency. So there's a lot to be grateful for in the midst of what is truly a health disaster. Yeah.
I think I've seen you more in the past few months, Astrid, than I've seen you in like 5 years before that. Well, since you last came to Bowdoin, probably.
I think so, since 2016 when I was there. Yeah. I know. I miss you some weeks when I don't see you, Dave.
How about for the others of you guys? What's it been like for the Brentano, Serena?
We haven't done very much during this time. So our last concert was last March 1st, I think. And we've done a few streaming things, but we have not embraced the music on Zoom or music on the internet, whatever uh, thing particularly. We've done a few things. There are a few places like the Chamber Music Society of Philadelphia, some series in New York. The Y has put on some streamed concerts. So we have taken part in those. And I'm grateful to them for keeping, the music going, but I can't say that we've really loved just playing for the camera and not for an audience. Audience, it turns out, is really important. That's one thing that I've really learned, because studying the music, it's just the music and it's wonderful, and you think, well, that should be enough. But when it comes right down to the end, the very end, you want to share it, and it's not the same playing in an empty hall. It's just not the same. So the audience is actually really, really important. And we're looking forward to, when people can gather again. But this has been a really kind of turning inward time for me and for our group, I think. I don't know. I've been spending a lot of time practicing, still trying to get better, getting to know, all the Bach, all the Isai, just practicing all the solo repertoire, and really trying to straighten out some things in my technique that I, wish I had addressed when I was 15. But, it's never too late. So.
It's true. It's true. You work in a different way when there's not deadlines right on top of you. We have to do this on this day. We have to go here and do this on this day. And it's a different attitude towards.
Yeah, I've really been taking things apart. I'm really curious, actually, to get back to it and see if all of this work will change, once I'm in front of people again and able to perform again.
I've been hearing a lot of Hindemith coming out of Phil's house lately, so I think he's up to something too, I think.
Wow, I take that as a compliment. If you can hear Hindemith all the way in your house from my house, I must be doing something right.
Film production.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything about the last few months that has made you, okay, no doubt we're all looking forward to playing for audiences and playing concerts, live music again. But is there anything else that the last few months, several months, have made you want to take forward more? I know you guys have done some very wonderful things online too.
Yeah, it's, so our experience, we actually flew home March 11th. We played concerts I think it was the 7th, 9th, and 10th. And then on March 11th, we got on a plane from Florida. We had a beautiful lunch at on the beach. And the phone started ringing kind of right before. And by the time we landed, there was a bunch of cancellations that had happened while we were in the air. And so it was fascinating. You talk about relationships, Dave, and what was so interesting is in those first few, like 6 weeks, there was so much changing, and we had a full concert schedule we usually take a break in mid-May, and we had so many things pivoting that those days were mostly on the phone, but it was such an interesting time because the strength of the relationships really was shining through. And it was about mid-April that there was Orcas Island Chamber Music Festival, where we're the quartet in residence there in the summer. And then our management company shared with you as well, MK artist John Zion, started put together a platform that is now ourconcerts.live. And we were supposed to play a very important Beethoven Cycle for Orcas Island that is a place that is literally family to us. And Aloysia Friedman, the director there, I said, John is thinking about this thing, and I think you guys should talk. And we created a Beethoven Cycle that we would never be able to do, where it was 12 concerts over, I think it was 6 weeks during the summer. And it was at that time, it was this mountainous adventure, and it was really innovate or die. And we even just finding a location depended on relationships, because things were shut down, we were all quarantined so that the quartet could try and protect its bubble, but that, of course, impacted families. And on the day of the first stream, where we had been working for 2 weeks, at 1 o'clock, we called it and moved to a second location to start the concert at 7, which meant we had to tear down 2 weeks of work, move it half an hour, and set it all up and get it working, and then play a concert of Beethoven, which of course is simple. And, there was this, what I love about it is the camaraderie and the strength of the relationships we built in the quartet to be able to pull that off, but also outside of the quartet. And then to have 12 runs to figure out what this live streaming thing was, to figure out what it was like. It's so weird, like you say, Serena, like, for a live stream, you're sitting there and then all of a sudden go. Whereas at a concert, you're in the hall and you rehearse, and then, you hear the audience come in and there's this excitement building and there's all this prep, and then you go out and start. Whereas the live stream, like 2 minutes before they say go, you're moving cameras and doing all this stuff, and all of a sudden you're supposed to play Beethoven. And what I think we all loved about it is we started to figure out, for the four of us, how we could still connect with our audience. And it's a very different medium, a very different way. And it gave us a chance to discover what we loved about it, and also what we thought would be possible with it. So we've taken more breaks this year than ever in our career. We did some live streams and pre-records in October, and did a live concert in Phoenix in November, where Janet Green, go Janet, at Phoenix Chamber Music Society, she partnered with a theater company. Again, back to relationships. The theater company provided the stage. There was a church that provided the land, and the Chamber Music Society provided coffee pots. And she said, literally, that's what we brought. But they created a safe place where there were multiple entrances. Everybody was required to do certain things. You couldn't just walk around. And, we tried it out. And there was something so different and yet so special about it. So we've tried to continue that consistency and did a few of those in January. I just played a live concert on Friday in Corpus Christi, Texas, where Susan Sturman, again, they're figuring it out. And I think for us, it's been a real deep dive into the strength and the power of networks and relationships and innovation and curiosity. And, well, how can we create a safe concert experience? How can we isolate artists so that they aren't endangering others and they aren't endangered? And what are audience members able to do, and how do we keep that safe? And I think, I look forward to seeing, I've missed the traveling. I've never been in one place so long in my life. But I've also loved having the consistency with my kids, and having a regular pizza movie night. Like, that was non-existent, and it's so much fun. So I feel so deeply for all of the devastation that we've all experienced, and some more than others. I also I'm optimistic to see what we build for the future, and how these experiences can impact, the ability for others for this to continue in some way. In many ways, I think there's more people listening to classical music and attending concerts than ever before. And it's just in a very different way. And we're learning how that works amidst a health crisis and pandemic that puts all of these other rules in place. So for me, it's been a contemplative experience. It's also been an energizing experience. It's also been a really, I would say, empathetic experience to really feel into what each of us are going through, and understanding it in the way that I can, and allowing for each of us to have that experience.
That was well said, Will. I invite, once again, any questions through chat, though we're happy to keep Dave and I are happy to keep talking about these things with you guys. I agree with you, Will. I think we're all focused on getting back to live concerts because the idea of sharing art and sharing music as a community with live human beings, there's nothing better than that. But you're right. The way that this all these circumstances have pushed us to think about what it means to connect with others, connect with music, connect with our colleagues, connect with audiences. The mandatory push into technology. You know, I have some colleagues, I'll probably include myself in that would really have shied away from Zoom lessons or Skype lessons or FaceTime lessons because of all the ways in which it is limiting, especially not the least of which is sound quality. But we had to do it. And so all of us learned to connect in the best way possible through that. And so I think we're going to take all of that into the future, as much as I know that we're all going to go back to making music live with each other. I have another question for you guys because, we actually have one question in the Q&A, so I will go there first. And it's a question about programming. How do you select repertoire? And that's a great question. There are many, many wonderful string quartets out there now and great young ones coming up all the time. And certainly one of the ways that you were talking about how unique every quartet is, and one of the ways in which you define yourself as a string quartet is by what you program. I think we all came up in an era when you started with Haydn or Mozart, you played Bartok, and then you played Brahms or Mendelssohn or Schubert, and that was it, right? But now you can do so many things. You can vary the length of the concert. You can, I know Brentano has done very early music that they then adapt to the string quartet and juxtapose it with newly written music. I mean, there's so many avenues you can go in now. Could we talk about programming a little bit, anyone, and how you go about that, how you guys go about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in because we've been spending a lot of time as a quartet now talking about repertoire for the coming seasons. And like you, Will, and I'm sure Serena, all the canceled concerts, you guys, the Ying Quartet, just like, oh, there goes that repertoire. What do we do with that? Do we bring some of it forward? Did Beethoven get a proper salute? What's going to happen? But I think in our particular group, it's a very interesting thing. I think most of us grew up listening to the Juilliard Quartet in a different incarnation. And now to be a part of it, there is the sense of legacy and tradition. And what are the Juilliards known for? The Bartok, the Beethoven, the Carter, all these things. We worked on and performed Dutilleux, ainsi la nuit this past year. And it's kind of, wow, how do we keep that tradition alive? And how do we also bring in some new things to juxtapose and have a new kind of context for these works? And so we're spending a lot of time now kind of diving into a group of composers that we don't know that much about, or we haven't looked that much into, underrepresented composers, people of color, women composers, all sorts of people who are out there doing great things, younger composers. It's kind of, it's this great opportunity now, I think more than ever, to enjoy having a rich appetite for new things, unfamiliar things. And so that's been a real preoccupation and a pleasure. And what started out as a little list has just blossomed into pages and pages and pages of things to explore. So that's very exciting. And you're right, I think groups kind of do get their identity through their programming and show their love of the repertoire in that way. So I'm excited about how we're going to, I think Beethoven and Wiedemann are coming with us forward, and then some new voices are going to join us. And I think Dutilleux is so beloved, he might be making an appearance or two next year as well. So it's fun.
Serena, Will, thoughts about programming?
Yeah, well, we've done, there's a lot of different ways that programs come into being. Sometimes a presenter will say, we want you to play this. Okay. And we'll say, either okay or no, we won't do that. Sometimes we'll commission something new. That's really involved process of listening to a lot of different composers. They're looking at their websites, choosing someone. But lately, I think we've come more to doing these sort of projects or thematic programs that try to show different angles of a piece. Like we did one last year that I really liked a lot called Lamentations. And it was basically about Bartok 2. That was the second half. Um, but looking at that piece as a lament and then choosing a bunch of different laments for the first half of the program, including Dido's Lament, including a piece by Guillaume Lequeux, who was a contemporary of Franck, um, a not very well known Belgian composer. Anyway, a number of different things that kind of focused that angle, focused on that angle of Bartok 2. And I really enjoyed that one. That led us to another project. We're going to do a project with Dawn Upshaw next year called Dido Reimagined, which will have Dido's Lament, but she's going to sing it this time. But we commissioned composer at Juilliard, Melinda Wagner, to write a sort of monodrama on the Dido and Aeneas story, but told from Dido's point of view. And it's an all-female cast. The librettist is Stephanie Fleischman, the composer Melinda Wagner, singer Dawn Upshaw. So Mark and Misha will have to fend for themselves on this project. But yeah, and we also have a Stravinsky we decided it was Stravinsky's anniversary, which is maybe overlooked. I don't know if people are planning. Beethoven certainly got a lot of attention for his. I don't know if Stravinsky will get quite as much, but we did plan a program kind of centered around Stravinsky. He didn't write that much for string quartet, so it will include other things that relate to Stravinsky. He loved Gesualdo, and as you mentioned, we like to arrange these early madrigals for a quartet. We think they work beautifully, and that will be part of the program. John Cage wrote things that have to do with Stravinsky. We might include poetry. That's another thing we've been doing a little bit more of lately, including readings, poetry that has to do with the subject. So yeah, there are a lot of really interesting things to do and ways you can go with programming. But yeah, we started with like Haydn, Bartok, Mendelssohn too. We joke about it all the time. That's like the standard great program. That's a great program.
The sandwich.
Yeah.
Will, do you have any thoughts? And I wonder if, you share what's on your mind, but I wonder if being in Austin has influenced you guys much, and especially with, you said you have a little bit of a country western background to you, so you must really love being in that scene there. But yeah, how about the Mural Quartet right now?
Yeah, well, I do love being in Austin, and it does. It's interesting because we've had a lot of conversations about that, and it's changed even a lot over the last just 5 or 6 years with all of the different hybrids and acceptance of other music coming into the concert hall. I remember growing up, and even in the Borromeo Quartet days, which would have been 2000 to 2006, doing an encore of a fiddle tune at a classical music concert was risky. And you had to, I would clear it, I would talk to the presenter, and the presenter, there would be these weeks of conversations that would lead up to it. And then being out in Utah in the Fry Street Quartet, that was a much simpler sale, but for specific presenters. And now with a lot of these different groups and our changing view of music, it's been fascinating to see what is possible. And certainly being in Austin, we have this incredible music scene here, not just country western music, but jazz, comedians. And so we do some projects here. There was a project we did, and again, it stems from different ideas. There's a great guitar society here. And so we commissioned a work for 100 guitars, and string quartet. And we've never done it anywhere outside of Austin, but it's like, wow, that was amazing. And what a sound. And where else, how could you start to envelop some of the weaving of the fabric of what Austin is? And you also have to be careful in balancing the branding and the marketing of who the Mural Quartet is in New York, which is a very different venue and atmosphere. So I think in the nuts and bolts of programming for us, we sort of have a system where John Largess, our violist, is in charge of forwarding repertoire, but he and I together kind of look at, well, what kind of things are weaving together that we see important to the quartet, that are relevant to our daily lives. Like you said, Astrid, unrepresented composers and women and people of color. And how do we look at projects that could weave those themes and the importance of doing those at our level and what that can mean for the industry. And so we're looking at a few projects right now where how could we weave together how all of those can work together, and who could we involve, and what could we symbolize in how we commission, or how we have people working together, composer and librettist, or two composers, that shows a collaboration that world peace could stem from, right? But then what happens is, in a general sense, John and I come together with some ideas in quartet talk. We bring stuff up with Daniel and John, and we kind of just start piecing together programs and pitch those within collaboration with our manager. We did a fun exercise 2 years ago where we said, all right, well, what if we just had 10 years left? What would people want to play? And I had a whiteboard, and you just named pieces you wanted to play. Say you had just 10 years left to play in a string quartet, and I just wrote them all down. We did that for 2 days, and then I threw like the audible at everybody, and I said, all right, you've just got one season. What are the pieces you're playing? And those got a red circle. And everybody was like, that's not fair. You said 10 years. I was like, nope, 1 year. That's it. Something happened. I don't know what, but that's it. And then, so that was fascinating to see how you made choices about that. And then at the very last minute, I said, all right, I'm so sorry, but you've just got one concert. What's on it? And everybody gets to pick one piece, and those got a star. And what we took from that was both, what were we passionate? What voices had we played and wanted to be part of that experience? And also, what weren't we playing? And also, what themes came up? What were the discussions around it? And that has led to some really interesting conversations about, well, what could we dedicate these next 3, 5, or 10 years to? And what is the legacy that we want to develop from where we are now? And so it does weave, though, with, well, what do people want to hear? And how, as an artist, do I want to grow? What do we want to move in the quartet or develop in our own artistic voice? The Du Tillieu, for example, I love that piece. Mm-hmm. It's so incredible, and audiences love it.
They do.
But it is a wonder to put together, and then what can you elevate around it to elevate both that piece, but then the other pieces on the program to tell that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Will. And I think that's really fascinating. But I must say that I'm glad you're a violinist and not my doctor.
There was actually some aggression when I pulled that 1 week, or the 1 year. There were a couple unhappy people, but we got through it.
We've reached the end of our hour together. It blew by. I always think that if there was any way to ever have a string quartet convention, that none of us would get any sleep, because there's so much to talk about, and maybe we can just leave it at a couple of things that have been mentioned. One is the curiosity, and that certainly applies to this idea of programming, that there's a wide world out there. Musically, of course, the expansion of all kinds of repertoire, all kinds of styles, the possibility of interdisciplinary collaborations, but also the human side of it, the ability to connect with your audiences and with your community. And what does that mean, especially with where we are as a society? What can we as artists do? And the wonderful thing about chamber music is that we're not doing it alone. You know, we're not making these artistic, we're not posing these artistic questions and questions of humanity by ourselves, but with trusted colleagues, people who have been in the trenches with us. And I know that's hugely rewarding and also deeply, I think, encouraging, that I know that I can bring an idea and I can be totally honest and vulnerable with ideas and throwing things out. And my colleagues, I trust them, and they will come at it with their sensibility and their wisdom. And as I think, Serena, you said, the sum is definitely greater than, the whole is actually even greater than the sum of the parts. And that's a beautiful way to think about what a life in chamber music is. So thank you guys. Thank you, Astrid, Serena, and Will.
Thank you.
Thank you very
For
much.
this conversation.
A lot of
And,
fun seeing you all.
we will see you live on stage sooner, hopefully, than later. But thank you also to everyone who's tuned in. And we'll see you. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.